This week's Parsha is Parsha Mishpatim. And it comes immediately after the Aseret Adibros. Like we have the Aseret Adibros Yisro. And that fact is actually highlighted upon by Rashi because Rashi points out that the Parsha begins Ve'ele HaMishpatim, that there is a connective Vav HaMechaber, to teach you that the Mishpatim, which are the civil laws, are also from Sinai, which has a deep meaning, because there are many people out there, social humanists, there are people who believe that, there are certain basic logical assumptions that need to be made for the functioning of society. That doesn't mean that they're divine. But we believe that even the Mishpatim, even those things, like basic things like function, don't steal, don't kill, but it all comes from Sinai. And actually, to punctuate this, the Sanhedrin, right? Sanhedrin, there was the high court. Where was it situated? On the Beis Hamikdash. The Lishkas HaGazis was the chamber of hewn stone, was there because we don't believe in the concept of separation of church and state. It's not something. There's no separation. Right? That's the issue that they're dealing with today in Israel and all these problems. Because we there is no such thing. Everything is has to be based on from the divine understanding. And that's what makes it immutable. Otherwise, it can be changed every 5 minutes. But
I'm not sure how we believe how this country's the difference between church and state. Also,
the way
it says it is, but
it is. I mean, the whole public school system, the way everything functions today, is that you can't even bring up.
But it's not, because they celebrate Christmas stuff and they celebrate.
It's commercial. It's all commercial. Today it's not viewed as religious based, it's versus commercial. Uh-huh. But the idea that you can't even mention God in the classrooms, I mean, that's, we see where it's taken the United States in terms of the crumbling of morality.
But on the money it says, in God we trust. Right.
So that's the great, conflict, because the original Puritans that established the country, they were very deeply vested in Christian belief. It wasn't that's the conflict. But nevertheless, we don't believe in that, and the Torah punctuates that by making sure that right after the Aseret Adibros, we understand the Mishpatim were part of are part of it as well. I'm going to share with you an idea I heard from my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yochanan Zweig Shlita, that doesn't fit the normal parenting, perhaps, but it has deep psychological insights. I think that it's something we could understand, and I think it's also important to just understand the psukim, what they're saying. Let's start with some of the questions. We had in the Aseret Adibros, we had one of the 10 commandments was Lo Signov. Right? Lo Signov means don't steal. Okay. But the Gemara teaches us that it's not referring specifically to stealing of possessions. It's actually referring to kidnapping. How does the Gemara deduce that it's referring to kidnapping? Because the Gemara says that it's one of the Yud Gimel Midos, Dover Alomed Me'inyano, something that is learned from the area in which it's been placed in the Torah. Since you find Lo Signov is sandwiched right next to Lo Sirtzach and Lo Sinaf, and Lo Sirtzach and Lo Sinaf is murder and adultery, which are capital offenses. Therefore, the Lo Signov that we're talking about here also needs to be a capital offense, which is what's the capital offense of Lo Signov? The capital offense of Lo Signov is murder. Is kidnapping. That's why it's not regular stealing, but it's referring to kidnapping. Now that being said, it's true that each one of the Ten Commandments are really, they have under it the penumbra of all the mitzvahs. Like all 613 are combined in the 10. Beside Yagon has a whole book on explaining how that's so. So under kidnapping, there'll be subsections of stealing, all the other things that fall in there. But the actual thrust of the kidnapping referred to in the Torah is specifically referring to a capital offense of lo signov is kidnapping.
It's between Lotinaf.
It's right after. It's after. Right. It's right after it. So the. In this week's Parsha, in Parsha Mishpatim, it actually elaborates when it is considered to be a capital offense. It means the full violation of kidnapping is elaborated in this week's Parsha. It says, Gonev ish umecharo, person who kidnaps another person and sells him, v'nimtza biyado mos yumas. All right? Meaning that he has to, in order to violate the prohibition of kidnapping, it has to be financially based. It means you've had to have done something that shows that you want to get a financial benefit from this person. So you either sell him or you have put him out, you made him work. But it's telling us, very interesting, it's telling us it's not. So you would think, the heinous violation of the capital of kidnapping is the fact that you kidnapped a person. No, according to the Torah, it says specifically, it has to be, and the Gemara points us out, you've had to have taken financial advantage. It's showing the impetus, the motivation of the kidnapping was to sell the person, to have him work, to generate money from this individual. That's the
like a ransom thing?
like ransom or actually sold him as a slave, sold him out there. That's the motivation here. So right. It's not a sexual in nature, or it's specifically you're using this person to make money. That's what the way the Torah describes it. There is a sefer that was written about close to 500 years ago. We use it. He's got a perush on Chumash on Gemara known as the Shita Mekubetzes. He also has a responser, Betzalel Ashkenazi. Shalos and Shu is Betzalel Ashkenazi. Betzalel Ashkenazi was one of the great rabbis of his time, 15th, 16th century. I believe that he was in Tzfas. I think he was, because if I'm not mistaken, the Arizal might have been a student of his. We have his response. So we have a sefer on Talmud, the Shita Mekubetzes. Every yeshiva you'll find it. Less known is his response, his shuvos, and he asks the following question, fascinating question. He asks as follows: we find two distinct mitzvos in the Torah. One is lo signov, and one is lo sigzol. Gneva and Gazela. And the Gemara says, what's the difference between if you're a Ganev or a Gazlan? It means, what is the difference? How are you different? They actually have different punishments, we'll see. But what's the difference if you're a Ganev or a Gazlan? So it says a Ganev does it surreptitiously. That's the guy who sneaks into your house at night, or like a burglar, and you don't know that something's gone until later. Right? That's the victim only finds out later that he's a victim. At the time the act is being perpetrated, he does not know that it's happening. Gazlan would be like more the mugger. The Gazlan is the guy who comes over to you and says, "Okay, give me your watch." Right? And guys, 6'4", there's not much that you can do about it, and you just give him your watch. Right? So the Gazlan is more like a mugger and a ganav is like a burglar. It's the so listen to the question that B'tzalel Ashkenazi asks. He says, if the difference is whether the victim at the time of the act knows the perpetrator, why would kidnapping be called lo signov, or in this week's parsha, lo tignovu? Why would it fall under the gneva category? Is the victim is being kidnapped. He knows it's happening at the time it's happening. Why wouldn't the Torah refer to it as lo sigzol? Why are we referring to it as lo signov? This is the question B'tzalel Ashkenazi asks. So, one of the answers that he wants to suggest is that he says very often kidnapping involves small children. And therefore, the victim are the parents. And so at the time that it's happening, they are unaware of when it's happening at the time that it's happening, and therefore it falls under the category of lo signov. This is one of his answers. So, my Rosh Hashiva showed that could not be how Rashi understands. Rashi in Baba Kama understands, he says that cannot be. In one in Baba Kama, there's a number of pages deal with the concept of Yeush. What is Yeush? Yeush means a person giving up hope. So there's certain halachas in the laws of theft, of Geneva, that if something was stolen from you, and you are miyaesh, you have Yeush on getting it back, so in certain circumstances, the thief only has to pay you back the value of what it's worth. He gets to keep the item that he stole. If you were miyaesh, if you gave up hope from getting it back, certain things, there was a shinui, some things would change, then you don't have to get back you don't get back the item itself, because it's called yush kona. There's a certain acquisition that the thief has when the person was miyaesh. Not getting into all the technicalities, but the Gemara makes the following thing. The Gemara says this is only true by objects. But by kidnapping, there's no yeush by kidnapping. Rashi says, why is there no yeush by kidnapping? Because en adam mityaesh al atzmo. Because a person cannot give up hope on himself. A person doesn't give up hope on himself. The concept of yeush is not applicable by kidnapping. I'm getting all to all the specifics of it, but clearly, who does Rashi identify by kidnapping as the victim?
Kid.
The person. Right? So the answer that Rabbi B'tzalel Ashkenazi is giving doesn't work according to what Rashi is saying, because Rashi is telling us that according to Rabbi B'tzalel Ashkenazi, that's not an easy concept to understand too, that by kidnapping of children, the victim are the parents. You know, it's like the children are the chattel, the children are owned, it's like they're, and it's, right? That's a difficult concept to assume that that's what it means. But the victim are the parents, and therefore they don't know at the time that it's happening. Since they don't know at the time it's happening, it's called gneva, not called gazela. Rashi clearly is not learning like that. Because Rashi was applying what the Gemara says, that there's no yush by kidnapping, says why? Because a victim doesn't miyash on himself. Clearly the victim is not looking at it as the parents. You're looking at the victim of the kidnapping as the children themselves. And there, as whoever's been kidnapped as the kid, and therefore we're back to our question. The person knows he's being kidnapped, and he knows it's happening. If he knows it's happening, why would this fall under the title of Geneva and not fall under the title of Gazela? Right? One question. So I guess really two questions. Number one, why is the Torah emphasizing the fact that it's financially based, the kidnapping? And the Torah is doing that. We're pointing that out. That obviously has some emphasis here. But the real question we're asking is the Reb Tzal Bashkenaz, the Shita Mekubet's question: why is kidnapping, if the person knows it's happening, why is it identified as an act of Geneva, not an act of Gezela? Second question: in the Parsha, in this week's Parsha, it tells us that if a person does Geneva, what is the punishment? You have to pay kefil. Kefil is the Aramaic for double. Chaim Shnayim Yeshalim. You have to pay twice what you stole when you do Geneva. Right? You have to pay twice. The Rambam explains why. Why do you have to pay twice when you do Geneva? So he says because the punishment has to be corrective. When someone has done something wrong, we have to analyze what's the motivation of what it is, why he did it, and then we have to, in the punishment part of it, we have to try correct what it is. It has to tie to what he's doing. If it's not tying to what he's doing, then it doesn't really correct.
Punishment has to fit the
Right. A lot of teachers, they keep the kid in for lunch. How's the? If it doesn't fit what he's doing, then the kid's not learning anything from it. Just to be punitive, we're not here just to be punitive. So there is a compensatory portion. There's been a victim, right? You want to compensate him for it. But how's that corrective? So the Rambam says an unbelievable thing. He says, you try to steal his $100. If we just make you give back the $100, so you compensated the victim, right? You compensated the victim. But how's that teaching you anything? You didn't lose anything. If you wanted him to lose $100, we need you to feel what it means to lose $100. So the only way we can make you understand what it means to lose $100 is if what? You pay him double. So you're paying him double. Okay, why should he get double? Different question. But the point is, the reason you're paying double is because that's the only way you know what it means to lose $100. Because you're not losing $200. The $100 is his $100. So give back his $100. Then Ma'oilu Chachamim, you didn't do anything. You just gave it. Of course you have to give back. But that's not the punishment. The punishment is feel what it means to lose the $100. You feel what it means to lose $100, then you pay double. That's what the Rambam says. That's a brilliant svara. The problem is Gzeila, you only have to pay keren. Gzeila, you only have to pay the principal. So the mugger comes over to you, makes you an offer you can't refuse. I'm going to break your legs if you don't give me your watch. You give him the watch, okay? You go to Beis Din, Beis Din give him back the watch. You should have to give him 2 watches. According to the logic of the Rambam, how does it help? You're compensating him back his watch. But that's not letting him feel, you're going to make him lose 2 watches, so why only give him back 1 watch? Right? So this brilliant svara in Geneva does not seem to follow through for the laws of Gezela. Right? So that's question number 2. Right? So let's just again review. Question number 1 is, why is kidnapping where the chora, the person knows the victim knows the perpetrator at the time it's happening, why should it be under the category of Geneva? What is causing the Torah to list it as Geneva? There must be a reason it fits under Geneva. How does it align better with Geneva than it does Geneva? That's kidnapping. It's not the same thing as stealing objects, whatever. But the Torah says, if you're going to compare it, it's more like Geneva. Why? It should be more like Gezela, not Geneva. The second question is the svara that the Rambam says, why you have to pay double, because you have to make the victim, the perpetrator, understand what he was trying to do to the victim, which will not happen. He only gave the keren. You have to give the kefil as well. You have to pay the double. Then why don't we say the same thing by Gezela? When it comes to thievery, when it comes to theft, there really could be 2 primary motivations. Each case there's a different motivation. There's one clear motivation is a person is, I want your money. Right? It's completely financial, meaning I want to go buy a car. I need $10,000 to buy a car, so I'm going to find $10,000 to buy that car. But it's financially motivated. That's the primary reason why I'm doing it. But there's another group of people. There is a group of people that the money is good, but really what they're trying to do is they are trying to demean or take control of another human being. You know, that's like the mugger who you're really willing to give him the wallet, but he pistol whips you anyway. What are you hitting the guy for? He's giving you the money. Why are you hitting him? Because that's not the underlying reason of what he's doing. What he's doing is he's trying to show you, I'm the boss. I'm in control. I am the one who's in charge. Right? So that's I'm not saying that might not have financial aspects to it as well, but the main thrust of what this person's trying to do is trying to put you down and show that he's in control. Obviously, the method that the person is employing in how he's stealing can reflect on what the motivation is. The guy who's sneaking in does not want to see you, does not want to deal with you. What is his primary motivation?
Control on his
money.
He wants the money. He doesn't want to deal with you. He doesn't even want to know who you are. He just wants your wallet. He wants your money. There's no control issue there. The only thing he wants your money. The guy he's in your face. He's walking over to you and say, "Give me your watch," and you see this 6'4" guy standing in front of you, knowing that he's going to break your leg if you don't, and he's going to punch you anyway. It's more than just about the watch. Power, it's control. I'm the boss. Right? That's a whole different mentality and motivation. So if we're going to divide Geneva and Gazela, we're going to divide those two, right? It would seem clearly that the Ganav is the one that's financially motivated. He doesn't want to deal with you. The Goslin, his primary motivation, not saying there's a secondary, but his primary motivation is to put you down. He's in your face. It's his control. There's a total control issue here going on. So, let's take a look now at the punishments. The person whose primary focus is financial. So for the punishment to be corrective, to be educational, what do you have to do?
Where it hurts.
You have to make him feel what it means to lose the money. It has to be kefil, it can only be double. Person who's in control, it's a control issue. You know what you do to him? You bring him to court and you say, you know what? You got to give that back. You got to give that back addresses what his problem is. He thinks he's in control. What do you show? The courts are representing the victim, saying, you got to give that back. And so you have that with kids as well all the time, right? One kid grabs something from the other kid, and you give that back. That's the punishment. The kid starts crying. Why? Because you've now shown him that he's not in control, that he's not in charge. There you don't need kefil. So for the Goslin, you don't have to have kefil because it's not about the money. It's about his control. When it's about his control, you can undo what he tried to do and you can teach him the message of what he tried to do just by making him give back the keren. You don't have to cause him a financial loss. So the Rambam comes up beautifully. He says only an issue by Geneva, that's where you have to pay double. By Gazela, you don't have to pay double. Okay? Let's analyze kidnapping now. And one of the things we wonder, why is the Torah making it all about the money? You have to sell him, you have to get financial. Because the Gemara is telling you the kidnapper is also, it's financially based. It's financially based. It's not about control. It's not about your control. It's about you wanting to make money off this fellow. So if it's about wanting to make money, so then how should you title it? That's why it's called lo signo. That's why it's under Geneva. It's under Geneva because it's about your motivation is the finance. So what is, we said kidnapping is not really either like stealing, it's not objects, it's not, but what if you're going to identify in terms of the motivation and where it fits better, there it should be classified under Geneva, not under Gezela, because it's not about control. It's about trying to make $1. That's what it's about, right? Even though you are taking a person, but at the end of the day, the Gemara is saying it's only the pasuk saying is gonav ish umecharo. That's the key point here. It's the umecharo, and therefore it identifies with Geneva. So basically, we're saying like this. We're saying the two questions here. We have number one question is why is it called Geneva? Well, it's called Geneva because it aligns with Geneva. It's financially based. And we're explaining now that, and that's the source of that is from the Rambam's understanding that you pay double when you want to cause someone a financial loss. Why don't we cause a person financial exile? Because it's not about exile. I want to finish off with...
What's the punishment of kidnapping?
Kidnapping is actually misa. It's you have to understand why that becomes the quid pro quo for that. But the person was taken, somebody who is trying to make a person into a non-individual. You're trying to say that person is like an object. He loses the right to exist as a person. Right? That's but the Rambam wrote the Yad HaChazakah. It's called the Mishnah Torah. It's Yudalet, 14 different volumes, and it's one of the most brilliant and commented about works that exist. The Rambam himself in his introduction says, once I have written this work, there's going to be no need for other books. There's more books on the Rambam than any other book other than the Bible, so other than the Torah. But the Rambam has two sections. One is the laws of Geneva, and the other one is laws of Gzeila and Aveda. When he puts Gzeila, it's good Aveda. But one's Gzeila. And the laws of Geneva and Gzeila start off seemingly the same thing. I'm going to read it to you in the Hebrew so you'll see the subtleties here. But they're both basically saying is that in order to do Geneva, you have to steal at least a pruta. And in order to do Gezela, you have to steal at least a pruta. Pruta is like the minimum amount of what's considered anything of value. But listen to, in the laws of Geneva, he says like this. Hagonev mamon mishave pruta v'lamala. Someone who steals money that's a shave pruta or above, over a lo sase is violated a lo sas in the Torah, which is lo tignov. Right? Now, it comes to lo sigzol, right? You would sing, just change the wording, right? Mm-hmm. He writes there, Hagozel es chaveiro shave pruta, over below sase shenemar lo sigzol. Look at the difference in the subtlety of the Rambam's lashon. In the first case, he says a person who steals money from his friend. In the second case, he says he steals from his friend. He gozel. It doesn't translate well into English, but hagozel es chaveiro shave pruta. In the Gzeila, the Rambam's putting the emphasis on what's the theft happening. It's the Chaveiro. You're stealing his friend. You're taking control. That's the act is against the friend. So the Rambam is very, very careful in it that the laws of Gezela, the act is an act against the person. You're trying to take control of the person. It has to be at least the worth of value of pruta for Beis Din to do anything about it. But in the case of Geneva, it's focusing only on the money. Hagonev mamon mishav pruta lamala. He doesn't even mention the word chaveiro. Hagonev mamon mishav pruta. You're stealing shav because in the case of Gzeila, you're stealing the person. It's a control. It's an act of control against the person. Where the case in Geneva, it's just a completely financial act against the money.
See,
Yeah.